This is a piece of very, very dry sycamore, about 2 inches, maybe 2.5 inches thick by about, I think it was about 13 inches. Oh, there we go, 13 inches diameter, well, edge to edge. And I'm marking out the center here for it, and it's really dry, so I'm wondering how it's going to work on the lathe. Anyway, I started out with a long circular carbide cutter to try to flatten out the end, and what happened was I had a 3/8 inch worm screw in there, and it loosened, and I had to put a really big chunky worm screw in there because the wood was just so dry and punky that it was just loosened, so I had to start over. Here I'm drawing out the mortise for my 3.5 inch easy wood chuck jaws. Using a square carbide cutter bit, I'm making my mortise, trying to flatten out the bottom a little bit too at the same time, and then digging in the mortise. But I was a little leery of that worm screw, so I wanted to secure that mortise position and depth. Everything seems to loosen on this lathe. And as scary as that is, to have the headstock loosen, the tail stock loosen, the worm screw loosen, I'm trying to work my way around it, still using this lathe. This is a really long chisel. I'm guessing it's almost, I don't know, 3 feet long. It's the Pro Series. And I got it because this lathe is rather precarious with the tool rest quite a distance away from the wood piece, and I can't get it closer. Shy of buying more tool rests to extend out further into the piece, which I'm reluctant to do because I'm buying a robust Sweet 16. Yeah, can't wait for that. Okay, so now you can see I switched to the round carbide cutter, same length tool, and again, because of the distance between the tool rest and the piece. So I was hoping that would smooth things out a little bit. So this sycamore wood was really dry, and as you can see, it chipped out pretty badly, which made me want to use the negative rake scraper, which after I get it down to a more reasonable shape, more final shape, I will use that to try to get rid of those big chunks of chip out. I know it's the end grain, and it's just begs to have this happen to it. Now I'm using the diamond carbide bit to back cut the mortise so it would grab onto the jaws a little bit better once I flip this thing around. Now I'm finally at a place where I can use the square, actually it's got a little bit of a radius on it. It's a negative rake scraper, and it really should smooth out, and I can see that it's smoothing out a lot of the areas that are on the bottom that are kind of funky. And I'm hoping that between this negative rake scraper and the round negative rake scraper that I have, that all of those chip outs will go away, and I'll have a really nice smooth piece, especially after sanding. So I sanded the back and forgot to turn on the camera, sorry, but I did flip it, and now I'm working on the front. I thought it would be a good idea to check the thickness of this platter and make sure I don't go through the other side. I had about 3/4 of an inch, so I thought I could go down quite a bit more. I didn't want to go too far since the wood is so soft. So I think I went down to about 3/8 of an inch, maybe a 1/2 inch, something like that. So after an inspection, I could see that I had some punky areas and wormholes. Lovely. On the edge of the bowl, so I'm going to take care of that later on in the video, as you'll see. I actually filled it with a little wood filler. So I decided to add sanding sealer since this was a little bit soft, and I put a couple of coats of that on, as you'll see, to try to get rid of some of the softness in that wood. I decided to add wood filler in those wormholes and buggered up corner. I wanted it to be more stable. So once the wood filler dried, I put another coat of sanding sealer on it to even make it more firm. So it just seemed to be a lot easier to put it in this little can. I saw another guy on YouTube, Phil Anderson I think his name is, and he did this, and I thought, that's a really good idea. I think I'm going to do that too. As much as sanding sealer finishes the wood, it also brings out a great color, which I love, on this Sycamore bowl, which it really needed some help. It was just so blonde. So after I signed the piece on the raw wood, I finished the bottom of it with sanding sealer again to seal it off. I like the way this looks, but with closer inspection it needed more help. So I decided to try to remove the little bits of tear out that I had left by texturizing it with this, I believe it's a sorbet tool, and it leaves an interesting texture, which you'll see in the end on this platter, and it really finished it off beautifully, so I'm very happy with the way this turned out. Here I'm using the negative rake carbide bit scraper again I don't want to have the same problem again, so I was hoping I wouldn't, and I didn't. So I was very happy that this negative rake cleaned up any tear out that I had in the first place, that I was trying desperately to avoid. So I decided to try this new wax. It's called PETA's True Grit, and I just wanted to see how smooth it would make it, and it turned out to be pretty nice. I put it on here and then I let it sit for like 20 minutes or so, and then went back and rubbed it off until nothing was coming off anymore. I could tell by what was left on the paper towel. And finally, I'm adding feed-in wax. I put that on with a brush to get into those little grooves and marks that I made from that sorbet tool. I want to make sure that they were in there. And I let that dry for about 20 minutes, came back and then buffed it off. I love the way this piece turned out. Those dark lines in it add such a great contrast and character to the piece, and the fact that I could rescue this tear out, which tends to make me nuts, but I rescued it, so I'm very happy that I was able to do that and also fill in some of those wormholes with the wood filler. All in all, I think it's a great piece.